He laughed at me in front of everyone, called me a beggar, but he didn't know what I knew about him. That was Harold Whitaker, my next-door neighbor in Fairview, Ohio, 76 years old, and I have lived long enough to know when a man is showing you his real face. Harold showed his on a Saturday morning, right outside the church pantry, with half the town standing close enough to hear. I had gone there for a box of canned goods, not because I wanted charity, but because my Social Security check was late and my daughter Linda had just asked me for help with her boy's medicine. I wore my clean brown jacket and my old work shoes, the same ones I used back when I repaired school buses for the county. Harold pulled up in his shiny black pickup, stepped out with that grin of his, and said loud enough for everyone, "Well, look here." Mr. Dawson finally found his proper place in line. Somebody chuckled. Somebody else looked away. I kept my hands folded over my cane. Then Harold leaned closer and said, "You want me to toss you $1, Frank? Or would that hurt your pride?" That one landed hard. Not because of the words, but because my grandson Tyler was there beside me, 12 years old, holding the empty grocery bag. I felt him shrink against my side. "Let it go," I told him quietly. But Harold was not done. He looked around at the people from church, at Mrs. Bell from the pharmacy, at Pastor Reed standing by the folding tables, and he laughed. "This man acts proud on Maple Street," he said, "but he's just another beggar when nobody's looking." The whole place went still. I looked at Harold's face, at that red neck and those pale, restless eyes. I had known him 9 years. I had heard the late-night arguments through the fence. I had seen strangers pull into his garage after dark. I had watched his wife, Carol, sit alone on the back steps with her hands shaking. And I knew something else, something he thought had stayed buried, stayed. But I only nodded once and picked up my food box. Harold smiled like he had won. That afternoon, when Tyler and I got home, he asked me, "Grandpa, why didn't you say anything back?" I set the cans on the kitchen table and looked out the window at Harold's house. "Because," I said, "some men don't fall when you push them." Just then, Harold's garage door opened, and a woman I had never seen before stepped out crying. That woman stayed in my mind longer than Harold's words did. She moved fast, head down, one hand wiping her face like she didn't want anyone to see her cry. Harold came out a few seconds later, looking around like he'd misplaced something, then shut the garage door a little too quickly. I didn't say anything to Tyler about it. I just told him to put the cans away and wash his hands for lunch. We ate quietly. Peanut butter sandwiches, same as always. Tyler kept glancing toward the window. "Is that man always like that?" he finally asked. I took a slow breath. "No," I said. "Men like him. They get worse when they think nobody can stop them." That evening, I sat on my porch longer than usual. The sun was dropping behind the trees, and the street had that calm it gets before dinner time. People watering lawns, dogs barking in the distance, screen doors opening and closing. Harold came out around 6. Different shirt, same attitude. He saw me sitting there and gave a small wave, like nothing had happened. "Frank," he called, walking over like we were old friends. "No hard feelings about this morning, huh? Just a bit of fun." I didn't invite him to sit, but he did anyway, lowering himself into the chair across from me. "You know how people are," he went on. "Gotta keep things light." I studied him for a moment. Up close, you could see the strain around his eyes. Not age. Something tighter than that, like a man holding too many things together at once. "You embarrassed yourself," I said calmly. "Not me." His smile flickered, just for a second. "Well," he said, leaning back, "at least I'm not standing in line for handouts." I didn't respond. I just let the silence sit between us. He didn't like that. "You always had that quiet thing about you," he muttered. "Like you think you're better than people." "I don't think about you that much at all," I said. That landed deeper than anything louder could have. He stood up, brushing off his jeans. "Careful, Frank," he said under his breath. "People who fall that far don't usually get back up." I watched him walk back across the yard, shoulders stiff now, not so confident. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt heavier than usual. I got up, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the kitchen window. Harold's house was dark, except for the garage. A thin line of light slipped out from underneath the door. Then I heard it. Voices. Not loud, but sharp. A man and a woman arguing. Not his wife. I knew Carol's voice. This one was younger, tense, almost scared. I didn't mean to listen, but when you get older, you notice things without trying. "You said it was taken care of," the woman said. "I told you to trust me," Harold snapped back. "That's not what you promised." There was a long pause. Then something hit the wall, hard enough that even from my kitchen, I felt it more than heard it. I stepped back from the window. Not my business, I told myself. But the truth was, I already knew more than I was supposed to. And as I stood there in the dark, holding that glass of water, I realized something had shifted. Harold thought he had humiliated me in front of the whole town. What he didn't realize was he had just reminded me exactly why I had stayed quiet all these years, and why I might not stay quiet much longer. The next morning, Fairview looked the same as it always did, but it didn't feel the same to me. I stepped out onto the porch with my coffee, the wood creaking under my weight like it had for years. Across the yard, Harold's house sat quiet. Too quiet. His truck was gone, but the garage door was shut tight, like it had something to hide. Tyler came out a few minutes later, backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked at me, then at Harold's place. "Are you okay, Grandpa?" he asked. I nodded. I've been through worse than a loudmouth neighbor. That was true. I had seen harder days than this. Factory layoffs, hospital rooms, burying my wife. A man doesn't get shaken easily after all that. But something about Harold wasn't just noise. It had weight to it. After Tyler left for school, I walked down Maple Street like I always did. Same cracked sidewalks, same trimmed hedges, same folks waving from a distance. But I noticed things I had let slide before. Mrs. Bell from the pharmacy was talking to Mr. Jenkins near the corner. When I passed, their voices dropped. Not out of respect, out of discomfort. Word travels fast in a small town. "Morning, Frank," Mrs. Bell said, a little too carefully. "Morning," I answered. Mr. Jenkins cleared his throat. "Heard things got lively at the pantry." I shrugged. "Some men need an audience." He gave a short nod, like he understood more than he wanted to say. By the time I got back home, there was a folded note stuck in my screen door. No name on it, just 3 words written in a shaky hand. "Be careful, Frank." I stood there a long moment, turning that paper over in my fingers. No signature, no explanation, just a warning, or maybe a plea. I didn't throw it away. That afternoon, I went into town to pick up my prescription. The pharmacy was cool and quiet, smelled like antiseptic and old linoleum. Mrs. Bell avoided my eyes this time, but someone else didn't. Carol, Harold's wife, was standing near the counter. She looked thinner than I remembered. Shoulders pulled in like she was trying to take up less space. When she saw me, she hesitated, then walked over. "Frank," she said softly. "Carol." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she glanced toward the door, like she expected someone to walk in at any second. "I'm sorry about yesterday," she said. "He shouldn't have—" "You don't owe me anything," I interrupted gently. Her hands trembled just a little. "He's under a lot of pressure lately." I watched her carefully. "From what?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "That's not my place," she said quickly. There it was. Fear, plain and simple. "I saw someone leave your garage yesterday," I said, not raising my voice. She looked upset. Carol's eyes widened just enough to confirm it mattered. "That wasn't—" she started, then stopped herself. We stood there in silence. The hum of the refrigerator behind the counter filled the space between us. Finally, she leaned in just slightly and whispered, "You should stay out of it, Frank." I didn't move. "Out of what?" Her voice dropped even lower. "Whatever you think you know, it's worse." A chill ran through me, slow and steady. Before I could ask anything else, the bell above the door rang. Harold walked in. The air changed immediately. He saw us standing there together, saw the distance between us, and his face hardened in a way I hadn't seen before. Not loud, not mocking, just cold. "Well," he said slowly, stepping closer, "looks like you two are getting friendly." Carol stepped back like she'd been burned. I didn't move. Harold looked at me, eyes narrow now. "You got something to say, Frank?" I held his gaze, calm, steady. "Not yet," I said. Something flickered behind his eyes then. Not anger this time, worry, just for a second. But I saw it, and that was enough to tell me one thing for certain. I was closer to the truth than he wanted me to be. That look stayed with me all the way home. Not the anger. I'd seen plenty of that over the years. It was the worry behind it. The kind a man can't fake no matter how hard he tries. That evening, the street felt quieter than usual. No kids riding bikes, no radios playing through open windows. Just a stillness that pressed in on you. I sat in my chair by the window and watched. Around 8, Harold's truck pulled in. He didn't get out right away, just sat there in the driveway, engine running, hands on the wheel. I could see his silhouette through the windshield. Then the garage door lifted, same as the night before. A few minutes later, a different car rolled up. Dark sedan, out-of-state plates. It parked halfway into the driveway like the driver didn't plan on staying long. A man stepped out, tall, younger than Harold, dressed too clean for this neighborhood. He didn't knock, just walked straight into the garage like he belonged there. I leaned forward in my chair. The door shut behind him. Not 5 minutes passed before the voices started again. Louder this time, sharper. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught enough. "You said Friday," the younger man snapped. "I needed more time," Harold shot back. "You don't have more time." There was a pause. Then something heavy slammed against metal. I felt it in my chest. I should have turned away. A man my age knows when to mind his business. But there are moments, rare ones, when you realize minding your business is exactly how things get as bad as they do. I stayed where I was, A few seconds later, the garage door cracked open just enough for air, or maybe to keep things from echoing. That's when I saw her. The same woman from before. She stood near the back wall, arms wrapped around herself, eyes red. She wasn't part of the argument. She was caught inside it. "Please," she said, voice breaking. "This isn't what we agreed on." Neither man answered her. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just money trouble. This was something tighter, something messy, something that pulled people in whether they wanted it or not. The younger man stepped closer to Harold, lowering his voice. "You think you can just stall forever?" he said. "You're already in too deep." Harold didn't answer right away. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. "I've handled worse than this." The kind of sentence a man only says when he believes it. Silence followed, thick and dangerous. Then the younger man laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Not this time," he said. A moment later, the garage door slammed shut. The light underneath disappeared. I sat back slowly, heart steady but heavy. Across the yard, Harold's house looked like any other. Quiet, ordinary, safe. But I knew better. And as I sat there in the dark, I realized something had changed inside me too. This wasn't just about what he said to me anymore. This was about what he was doing, and how many people were getting pulled under with him. My phone rang just then, sharp in the silence. I picked it up. It was an unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Frank Dawson," I said. There was a pause on the other end. Then a woman's voice, shaky, familiar. "Please," she whispered. "You're the only one who's seen this. You have to help me." I didn't speak right away, because I already knew whose voice it was. And I knew the moment I said yes, there would be no stepping back. I didn't answer her right away, not because I didn't recognize her voice. I did. It was the woman from the garage. The one caught in the middle of something she didn't understand until it was too late. "I've seen enough," I said finally. "Tell me what you need." She let out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it all day. "I can't stay here," she said. "He told me things he shouldn't have. I didn't know what I was getting into." I stood by the window, watching Harold's house, dark again like nothing had happened. "What things?" I asked. There was a long pause. Then she said, "You really don't know, do you?" I closed my eyes for a moment. "I know more than he thinks," I said. "But I need to hear it from you." Her voice dropped lower. "He's been moving money," she said. "Not just his, other people's. Promises, investments, deals that don't exist. He uses different names, different accounts. I helped him with paperwork. I thought it was legitimate." My grip tightened on the phone. "And now?" I asked. "Now people want their money back," she whispered. "And he doesn't have it." That didn't surprise me, but what came next did. "He told me once," she said, voice shaking harder now, "that no one would ever trace it back to him, because someone else already took the fall for the first round." A cold weight settled in my chest. "Who?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she said it. "A man named Robert Gaines. About 9 years ago." I didn't move, didn't breathe, because I knew that name real well. Robert Gaines had been my friend, my business partner back when I still worked on contracts outside the county. A quiet man, honest. Too honest for the mess he got pulled into. They said he mismanaged funds, said he moved money where it didn't belong, ruined his name. lost everything. Died 2 years later with people still thinking he was a thief. I had never believed it. Not fully. But I never proved otherwise. "Frank," the woman said softly, "are you there?" "I'm here," I answered, my voice lower than before, because now the pieces were lining up, slow and clear. "I've seen those papers before," I said. "Different names, same structure." Silence on the line. Then she asked, "What does that mean?" "It means," I said carefully, "your friend Harold didn't start this recently." I looked out the window again, at that house, at that man who thought he had buried everything deep enough. "He's been doing it for years," I said. My reflection stared back at me in the glass. Older, steadier, but not the same man who stayed quiet anymore. "He ruined a good man to keep himself clean," I continued. Her breath caught. "Then you can prove it?" I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, I could. 9 years ago, when things fell apart around Robert, I had kept copies, not because I planned to use them, but because something never sat right with me. Old ledgers, duplicate signatures, transfers that didn't match the timeline they gave. I had put them away, told myself it was over, told myself it wasn't my fight. But now I understood why Harold looked at me the way he did, why he was nervous, why he tried so hard to make me look small in front of everyone. Because he knew. He knew I was the only person left who could connect the past to what he was doing now. "Frank," she said again, more urgent this time. "Please." "What do we do?" I took a slow breath. Across the yard, Harold's porch light flicked on, like a signal, like a warning. "We don't do anything tonight," I said calmly. "Then when?" I watched his shadow move behind the curtains. "Tomorrow," I said. There was a long pause, and then I added, quiet and certain, "Tomorrow?" I stopped letting him get away with it. The next morning came quiet. Too quiet. I woke before sunrise, the way I do these days, and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee gone cold before I even took a sip. The folder was already there. Brown, worn at the edges, tied with a thin piece of string I hadn't touched in years. I untied it slowly. Inside were the papers I never threw away. Names, dates, transfers that never made sense. Robert's signature, and another one that didn't belong beside it. Harold's. Not bold, not obvious. But there, hidden in the details only someone patient would notice. I closed the folder. Outside, Maple Street was waking up. Cars starting, doors opening, normal life moving forward like it always does. I stood up, put on my coat, and carried that folder to the door. Halfway there, I stopped, because I heard something. Across the yard. Harold's garage door was already open. Too early. A car I didn't recognize sat halfway inside. The same dark sedan from the night before, engine running. I stepped closer to the window. The younger man was there, pacing now, agitated, talking fast. Harold stood across from him, not arguing this time. Listening. That was new. Then the woman stepped forward. She looked different. Not scared like before. Resolved. She said something I couldn't hear, and held something out in her hand. Papers. Harold's face changed. Not anger. Not confidence. Fear. Real fear. He lunged forward. And that's when the sound came. Sharp, loud, wrong. Everything inside me went still. The younger man froze. The woman stumbled back. Harold stood there, arm half raised, like even he didn't understand what had just happened. For a moment, no one moved. Not them. Not me. Not the street. Then the woman screamed, and I dropped the folder